let's then hear from our participants, and they'll tell you initially what this made sense to them, what they learned about their own family. As Professor Shin showed you, these are the DNA maps. By way of just reminder, you're going to see every male who participated will have a matrilineal and patrilineal haplogroup, right? And those go all the way back into prehistoric times. So those are only but one line, or two lines, of all the lines in your family. That's all we can trace without interruption, okay? The others you're going to see in the mapping of the globe that you'll see is about 500 years ago, as he said, before mass migrations began. And that's the mix of all the different branches in your family. So it's clear how those are different, okay? Okay. Avi, should we start with you?
Sure. My name is Valerian Kurd. Most people know me as V because that's the part of my name they actually remember. I work with the Department of Safety here on campus, and I was pretty excited to be part of this project. I don't know, it might be kind of hard to see up here on the screen, but growing up, a lot of people would call me a mutt. I prefer to think of myself as a hybrid. And kind of touching on that topic of purity, most people, they were like, yeah, we know you're probably a mix of something. So I was excited to see what percentages I had. You know, I knew that my dad was half African American, half Japanese. My mom, her dad came from Canada, and her mom was just, I guess, white, which I never really knew what to make of. So I was hoping that I would kind of get more of a breakdown of this, which I did. One thing that was surprising to me, and I think Dr. Huffman, there wasn't as much African as I was expecting, which kind of led us back to, you know, the effects of slavery throughout the history of America, which it was kind of nice to learn that and kind of know a little bit about more where I'm coming from. Another part that was a little surprising, and kind of also part of that effect, was the 26.9% British and Irish. Sort of expected the British. I wasn't really looking for the Irish, so that was kind of a surprise, but it was a welcome surprise. So that's pretty much how I break down, and I'm still trying to learn a lot based off of that. Dr. Huffman has helped me a lot with that, and it's been pretty exciting so far.
Right, so, and V will appreciate why I might ask this. If you saw V walking down the street, if you had to give him a label of race, what would it be?
It's okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. All right, now when you see him walking down the street, what would you think? He and I discovered that, in fact, we're French-Canadian cousins as well. And by the way, in terms of purity, how many had Neanderthal? Just so Jay can relax. Okay. Just saying.
And I hope they all had more than
They had more. My wife's really furious that she has more Neanderthal than I do, so it doesn't help me win any fights at home, though. Okay, Carla.
Okay. I'm Carla de Jesus. I'd like to start off with just a statement that came to my mind when we were doing this, and that is, no journey is ever taken alone. From birth to the grave, no journey is ever taken alone. I'm a student here. I'm a double major in broadcast and peace and conflict studies. And Lord willing, I will graduate this spring. So if you look up here at my mapping, I am part of the L2C2 haplogroup, which is a subgroup of L2C, which I think is really complicated. But my makeup is 63.6% sub-Saharan African. And of that, 43.5% is West African, and that's how we could kind of, what I say, put me right to where I came from, Senegal. 30.2% European, and of that, British and Irish, and a lot of that has to do with the slave trade, which was, I've kind of got a lot of mixed feelings about that. 3.4% was East Asian and Native American, and of that, 3.4%, 2.2% is Native American, which for me, that was a surprise on my mother's side, because on my father's side, his grandmother, he knew was Native American Indian, but my mother's side never spoke about that. So I think that's all from my mother's side, right? So that's who I am, and it was very, very overwhelming. I'm still overwhelmed by the information. So,
Again, one of the things that I love about this work is if you have a break in your family story, slavery's a big one. How do you find out who you were before that? With this kind of work, you can. Ellen.
Hello everyone, my name is Alan Fernandez. I'm a senior English major and I just declared a minor in Human Development and Family Science. I'm involved with Student Activities Board, Admissions Office, and Intercultural Office here at Messiah. So, there's a lot of colors, first off. Yeah, like I said in the documentary, it was very surprising, but I was very excited. So, 72.9% European, that was probably the biggest shock, especially, I'm not going to lie, growing up, it was hard. My perceptions of white people were a little bit of a work to get through. So the 12-year-old Alan in the back was like, "No, you're not white. Stop." So I had to fight him off for a little bit. So it was interesting to see that a lot of it was Iberian, a good amount was Italian, then Northern European, and then 16.3% Sub-Saharan African, majority West. The 6.7% East Asian, which is 6 Native American, that was really surprising, really cool. And the 1.7 Middle Eastern was also very, very interesting as well. And then just see unassigned. And so actually working with Dr. Huffman was really interesting to actually trace the migration of a lot of these groups to where I found out that there's actually a lot of traces as well of Afro-Brazilian connections in Morocco, connections in Portugal even, connections within a lot of European countries. So my genetic composition represents 3 continents, which is really crazy to think about. But also with that, got to see a little bit of the violence that occurred in my family composition, and knowing that there definitely was, or at least what's looking like, some slavery movements. And so that was, I wasn't as hard of a pill as I thought it would be to swallow, but it was a little bit, because I had to go back to my grandmother, who is pretty much the oral story keeper of our family right now. She's the only surviving grandparent. So it was interesting to finally speak to her and say, "Did you know we came from Brazil? Did you know we have Brazilian connections or this?" And she said, "Absolutely not. This is absolutely fantastic to hear." And it's really inspiring me to hopefully within the next year or so go to the Dominican Republic, go to the embassies, and just try to find more information, especially because some governmental tragedies happen in my family as well in the DR. So excited to start exploring that story and that journey.
Thanks, Alan. Did anyone else notice we found a faint trace? It probably goes back quite ways back in time, but Ashkenazi Jew as well. Zena.
Hello everyone, my name is Zena Goodwin. I am a junior majoring in psychology and minoring in criminal justice. I went into this project not really looking for much of anything, except for to see if there was more to what I already knew. The majority of my ancestry stems from sub-Saharan Africa, broken down into 8.3% West African and 3.1% Central and South African. I wasn't surprised about the European, the 8.1 European, British and Irish majority, and Northern European. Wasn't all that surprised about that. I actually kind of guesstimated about that on my own, like when I was a child. As far as the East Asian and Native American, I knew about my Native American ancestry because my great-grandmother's great-great-grandmother, she was half Native American. But I was surprised about Middle Eastern, the little 0.4% there, Middle Eastern and North African, as well as the Southeast Asian. I wasn't expecting that at all.
Kate?
I was pleasantly, I'm Kate Quimby, School of Humanities. I teach in communication and literature. And I've been here for 30 years. I was not surprised to see the Northern European, not at all. And actually it confirmed that some of the things I was told as a child were actually true, that the people that I was talking to knew something. And so that was kind of nice. I too have, maybe it's the other one, there's some Ashkenazi Jew somewhere in one of the broader Right, that's what I have, I'm not seeing that over there. What I did find out is that I learned more about my ancestry in one afternoon with Joseph than I had known in the previous 60-plus years. And I'm from haplogroup H6A1. My ancestors began in Africa. They traveled across the Caucasus, southern Europe, northern Spain, and then up into France, Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, Scotland, and Ireland. And so I realized that even though I had seen myself as an illegitimate child, I had legitimate roots. I really did come from somewhere, and that was confirming. I was also amazed by the science, how this mitochondrial DNA can be traced the whole way back to Africa. That just blew me away.
Jay.
I'm Grog. I was actually underwhelmed by all of this because the stories were very clear that half of us come from Scottish roots, sent over to Ireland, passed by the Catholics. Interestingly, my uncle still lives on the farm that was deeded to the family by one of the Penns when they decided who could we get to pacify the Indians since we're peaceful people, we can't do it. Oh, how about some Scots? 100% European. It wasn't terribly surprising. The surnames in my mother's side are Stauffer, Ziegler, Sollenberger, picture. So the thing that was encouraging, Joseph said, well, yeah, you're kind of boring. That's not exactly what he said. That's what he meant. He says, yeah, you're European and it's not very exciting, but on your mother's side, I believe it was, we're European. So we're some of the first to show up in Europe, and we're saying to everybody else, welcome to the neighborhood. The one thing that was distressing, and I'm hoping, you see, the 38.9%, my wife is going to laugh hysterically at this. She is desperate for me to go to France with her sometime. I'm not a big fan of French people. So when this shows up, it's a little embarrassing that I've turned my back on the family. I'm hoping that's 38% German and 0.9%. And the good news is my Neanderthal was actually lower than many people that certainly lower than my brother-in-law, who's pretty darn smart. Maybe he got all his smarts from Neanderthals.
You're all aware of this, don't you? Anyone who comes from Asia or Europe has Neanderthal genes. That's been discovered in recent years. Doesn't mean, let's upgrade Neanderthals, that's the point, right? Okay. DJ.
Hi, I'm Gisela McGowan, and I'm a senior psych major. And this is me. I'm first generation American, and like I was just explaining to other people, me and my sister were the only ones in my entire family, extended and all, born in this continent. So it's very, very interesting to find this out because we span like the entire world, which is really nice. And as you can see, I'm 95.8% sub-Saharan Africa, and most of that is in West Africa, but with Mr. Huffman, Dr. Huffman, we found out that is due to the slave trade, and actually most of my matrilineal haploid group is found in Mozambique, and through that migration, that's where that came from. And my family is from Jamaica, that's what I know. And from Mozambique to West Africa to Jamaica, and that was our travel. And there's the 3.9% European, and my last name is McGowan, so you can get that, the whole mix, British Irish and Scottish Irish. And with Dr. Huffman as well, we found some information about who I got the name from, my surname from. There were two William McGowan, senior and junior, who were merchants to Jamaica, so there's that connection as well. And so it's nice to know that I know where I get my name from the actual person, from Scotland or Ireland. And then there's the 1.1% East Asian and Native American, which is from Southeast Asia and broadly in that area. And my great-great-great-grandmother was Arawak Indian, and that's where that comes from. And it's just, when I learned this, it was just so interesting. And I'm broadly African, and with my my being first-generation American, I often ask the question, maybe that's because we didn't travel to America, so there wasn't that much intermixing. But it was a very cool journey to be on, and as I love it. So,
Kyle.
I'm Kyle Ponga. I'm a junior history education major, and some people have like a lot of colors on there. Mine's really just blue. I'm 99.7% European, which I kind of guessed at. What I didn't know going into it was I didn't know that I had any East Asian or Native American in it, which as you can see is 1% Mongolian. I never would have guessed that, which is not very much. So it's not a big deal, but within Europe, I am mostly British and Irish. It doesn't say like the non-specific Northern European, which we Dr. Hopper and I talked about it, and it's mostly British and Irish, which kind of makes sense because my great-great-grandfather immigrated from Ireland in the late 1700s. A lot of my family came over pretty early. I have German ancestry in America back to late 1600s in New York. And so what I didn't know was that I had any Southern European at all. I didn't know that I was Balkan or Sardinian, Sardinia island in the Mediterranean Sea. I had no idea about that at all. I was a little surprised I didn't have more Eastern European. My last name is Polinka, and that's Ukrainian. So I was a little surprised there wasn't a bigger percentage, but it's still, the fact that it's there, I think it's kind of cool. And just to like, get more of an idea about things. Freshman year, I was in Dr. Huffman's genealogy FYS, so I got a kickstart on this myself, but it's cool to actually get more definitive answers than just like, make sense records and stuff.
Quay.
I'm Quay San. I'm a freshman studio art major. I am a Migo scholar, and I'm part of the men's volleyball team here at Messiah. As you can see, I'm 50.9% European, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but that little 0.9% means that my dad is not 100% Vietnamese, which came as a little shock to us, which is open to a cool conversations with my grandmother, just to talk about where that came from. The other part is 48.5% East Asian and Native American. So it's kind of cool that we see 27.3% of that is that Southeast Asian. And there's 18.2% that is non-specific. We're guessing that's from the American Indian roots on my mother's side. And also, my little bragging right is I'm less than 0.1% sub-Saharan African. So I wasn't expecting that, but it's cool to see that. It's cool to have all those colors on my map.
I did some work with Quay's mom, and I'm persuaded they are related to Pocahontas, and I think that confirms it. Ashley.
So again, my name is Ashley Schaefer, and I'm the Director of Co-Curricular Service Learning here at Messiah. And as was mentioned in the film, my story is that I was in a closed adoption as an infant, and so I have no knowledge of my birth parents, even to this day. So I was not surprised to be 99.8% European. I had sort of been leaning that way, but was surprised to have a higher percentage of British and Irish. I think for a lot of my life I was pretending to be French, but
Somewhat.
So that's very exciting for me to learn, as well as Dr. Hoffman really walking me through some of the migration patterns from the Near East and Northern Africa, even though it's less than 0.1% of Middle Eastern and North Africa, just kind of tracing the migration patterns of H4A1 haplogroup. And so that was really, really interesting to see kind of the break in my people groups between the British Isles and Eastern Europe. So it was really exciting for me, and I'll talk more about this later, but just to really have a better understanding of heritage and belonging. And so I'll say that for a little bit. But
I'm Kevin Villegas. I'm the Director of International Student Programs here at Messiah. When I got the results, I wasn't all too surprised. My mother is Caucasian, and we can trace her lineage back in the United States all the way to 1630s. And so there's someone on that side that has done that, and I know all the surnames of everybody on my mom's side. What I didn't know was really a lot about my father's side, other than he was Filipino. So again, working with Dr. Huffman and just helping me understand some of the trade patterns of the Chinese, discovering that some of my DNA goes back to the 3rd century Han Dynasty, which is really interesting. So now that when I pick up our new international students at the airport from China, I'm like, hey, I'm Chinese too. But it was really interesting. If anything, it got me more interested in just learning about the history of the world. I already like history, but I think it was Dr. Huffman's trick to get us interested in history, or an excuse for him to do more research, because I think he just loves it and gets off on it. But I really appreciate being a part of this project and just learning about, I've just learned so much about how we are all related, and we all have ancestry together through our genes. And so it's just really neat to see this. Again, no surprises, mostly European. The Asian comes from my father's side, Filipino. Some surprises, but I just like my map. It's so colorful and cool, and it picks up the whole world.
And Kevin, also, I think you had some Ashkenazi in there
Yes.
somewhere, didn't it?
So Alan and I are
Yeah, that thing,
Ashkenazi brothers.
that may be one of the highest percentages we had, was it?
Oh yeah, and so my grandmother, I told her about that, and she was kind of surprised. So it led to some great family conversations.
Hey, Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie Young. I'm double majoring in electrical and computer engineering. And I had a really fun time working with this and getting to find out the results over the summer. Actually, I found out right before I was going to West Africa that I was just like a little bit West African. So I was like, I walked in, I was like, my people! It was really, really cool to find out to go in with that, because, you know, looking around like, maybe I'm related to them. It was fun. But I'm the vast majority European, as you can see. But I've got some Ashkenazi in there too. So I think the things that I was most excited about were actually like things that I were like the least of. But it was fun. I'm the majority British and Irish, which I knew my grandma on my father's side came off the boat from Ireland, and I was pretty sure that my mom's side was pretty much predominantly British. But it was just really fun sort of getting to research and actually connected with some people, relatives on the site. So it was really fun just getting to dig through and send like photos back and forth with other relatives that I found on there. So I had a really good time doing this. I would highly recommend it.
And Sarah.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Yunez. I am a nursing major, Spanish minor, and I play soccer here on the women's soccer team. So to me the coolest and most interesting part about all of this was seeing my roots beyond what my own family could remember. I grew up in two kind of distinct cultures on my mom's side, very strong PA Dutch influence. So when we got our initial results back, seeing that I was 75% European, I was like, yeah, like I'm probably all German. And like, so getting that back and like seeing the breakdown and seeing that 3.8% French and German, it's very interesting to see that it kind of goes beyond what my own family had kind of raised me in. And then on my dad's side, I know I don't like go back to my haplogroup, but half of my DNA does come from him. So that would explain part of his sub-Saharan African. The Native American, his grandmother was Colombian Native American from South America. So definitely very interesting to see to see all of this go beyond what I was even raised in. I'm just very thankful and blessed to have the opportunity to explore all of this.
We just have so many examples in our group of people who simply bring the world together in the Americas. It's quite remarkable. Well, just by way of review, for the sort of matrilineal haplogroups, you can see some of the similarities We have some common groups, mostly the H's, J's from Europe, and then the L's originating more lately coming out of Africa. So there's some grouping. Everyone, remember, has a matrilineal line, right? Male or female. For the men, then they can also do the patrilineal line. So we have fewer of those, but you can see, V, I don't know what happened. I wasn't sort of lowering you on the scale. You should have done. One of the things we want to talk about is, do you notice the last three? Okay, look at those gentlemen. Would you have said they're brothers? Okay. So we're going to talk a bit about that. So let's turn to that. We really want to have some conversation with you and see what your questions are and have some Q&A. Before we do, we thought it would be helpful for the theme of the symposium to move beyond not only saying what it means for us, but what does it mean for perhaps our thinking about others. And so we have 4 brief presentations for some individuals or groups on some of these topics. Carla will say a few words about, again, her sense of heritage that she developed, and also say a bit about her view of the journey we were on as a group. So.
Most of you guys know I can talk ad lib, but I wanted to write it down because what we did was very important. So Lisa, I'm going to read today. The journey. What did we learn? Well, we learned that we learned identity beyond the construct of race. My race tells me that I am officially an African American who is now black, but once was colored, officially labeled Negroid, and called a word that I cannot speak. So, here we are. Some here could always map their identity in migration. My family could only map the plantation we came from in Dillon, South Carolina, where our slave master name was Bethia on my father's side. So I have on a shirt that says, it's a Bethia thing. You just wouldn't understand. So I'm going to take this off, not that I'm stripping. And it's warm in here today, but I'm shedding. And that's what this was about. It was about a shedding for me. This haplogroup mapping, which goes back for me over 95,000 years, provided for me a maternal identity. I can now say, I am from Senegal. I am a Senegalese. I belong to the Mandinka tribe. A sense of pride, belonging, and landing has been given to me and my family. An identity that goes beyond a plantation here on American soil. We now have a better sense of our ancestors' journey. What have we learned? Again, no journey is taken alone. We are or trace back to one place, Africa. Though we each have different migration stories. This Ancestry project has taught us to see one another beyond color, to see one another beyond even an inherited ethnicity. It has taught us that we are all connected beyond the construct of race. We are all stories found in one book. Cesar Chavez said, once you educate a person, you can't take that education back. Genetic diversity evidence tells us we cannot keep talking about race as it has been constructed in America. We who have been educated, we must tell our stories, and we must encourage others to find theirs. Our consensus is the genetic tracing is more accurate than race construction. For identity terms, this was better for us for self-identity and to see one another beyond what we label as identity. It really did show us that you can't judge by color. Genetic tracing is a constructive tool that could and should be used in the difficult race conversation that needs to move forward in America. And hopefully we will move forward here at Messiah. Using genetic evidence opened up for us a new avenue for our own difficult conversations of reconciliation, painful historical racial experiences, and current emotional and cultural differences that divide us. See, we're sitting here nice and dressed up tonight, but we chewed it. We chewed it among ourselves. We had some really strong, open, raw conversations of what does this mean? how can, if we can't talk about it among ourselves, how are we going to carry it forward beyond the project? It was more than a project